Impossible! Altair's amphibious shriek pierced the stunned silence of the Galactic Council chamber. The Sele diplomat slammed a webbed fist on the crystalline podium, his mottled green skin flushed with outrage. The humans have tamed Garaxian spiketails? Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the assembled dignitaries, a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and growls from a menagerie of alien races. Stories of the spiketail's savagery were infamous. 30-foot-long, 2-ton masses of muscle, fang, and blade-like spines that had slaughtered armies and leveled colonies. But now, this upstart race called humans claimed to have domesticated the beasts. Altair composed himself and tapped a control pad. A holographic display bloomed above the chamber, showing a human male with a rugged jaw and a cocky grin. He was cuddling a purring spiketail as if it were a kitten and not the scourge of 100 worlds. The beast could have bitten him in half, but instead nuzzled him with surprising gentleness. This human, an Ambassador Brian Hicks, insists it is no trick, Altair said with disgust. He claims humans can bond with other species through affection, touch, trust. Cries of outrage and scoffing laughter echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Some decried it as an abomination. Others called it a hoax by primitive upstarts seeking attention. But Hicks remained impassive, meeting the glares of a dozen alien eyes with a calm smile. As the furor built, Altair raised a hand for silence. "There is more," he said grimly. He tapped the control again, and the image changed to a lush valley on Gorax Prime. A new human colony spread across the once deadly landscape, with spiketails roaming among prefab shelters and hydroponic gardens. Children played in sight of the clawed behemoths, and adults tended fields beside creatures that could gut a Zgrathi war rhino. It was a scene of impossible serenity. The humans offer to share their secret of cuddle bonding with us, Altair continued. They say it could bring unity in a divided galaxy. The council erupted again, some in avarice, others in fear and loathing. If humans could turn Gorax Prime from a death trap to a breadbasket, how much more might they accomplish? Where would their rising influence end? As the debate raged, Hicks leaned back in his observer's seat, hands steepled. The mysterious power of the human cuddle had baited the hook. Now to see who would bite. Ambassador Hicks drummed his fingers on the polished table of the Concordia conference room, anticipation humming through his veins. The Galactic Council had taken the bait. Now it was time to reel them in with the power of the cuddle. Reese paced behind him, his bonded spiketail patting at his heels. The beast's scales shimmered under the room's artificial light, its claws clicking on the hard floor. Reese reached down to scratch under its armored chin, drawing a rumbling purr that vibrated the air. The door slid open, and Altair entered, his amphibious features set in a mask of cautious optimism. He was flanked by a contingent of council members, each eyeing the spiketail with a mix of fear and fascination. "You have our attention, Ambassador Hicks," Altair said, taking a seat across from the human. "The council is intrigued by your proposal, but some remain unconvinced." Hicks smiled, the action crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Seeing is believing, Counselor. That's why we're here." Over the next hour, the conference room transformed into an impromptu cuddle seminar. Hicks and Reese guided the alien diplomats in approaching the spiketail, demonstrating how to read its body language and offer affectionate touch. Xyloth, the insectoid delegate, was the first to dare contact. His mandibles quivered as he extended a spindly appendage to stroke the beast's flank. The spiketail leaned into the touch, its deadly tail swaying gently. "Remarkable," Xyloth chirped, compound eyes wide with wonder. It's actually purring." Whispers raced through the assembled council members, a mix of awe and disbelief. Emboldened, others stepped forward to try their hand at cuddle diplomacy. As the seminar progressed, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Tension bled away, replaced by a tentative camaraderie. Even the most skeptical delegates found themselves drawn to the spiketail's surprising gentleness. Altair watched the proceedings with a growing sense of vindication. Turning to Hicks, he spoke in a low voice. "Your methods have merit, Ambassador, but some on the council will require more practical demonstration." Hicks nodded, his gaze calculating. "We anticipated as much. Reese and I are prepared to accompany a council delegation on a diplomatic mission. Show them how cuddle tactics can diffuse even the most volatile situations. Altair's webbed hand clenched. I may have a candidate in mind, a war-torn world where predator attacks have stymied all attempts at peace. If we could broker a truce there, it would be a powerful proof of concept, Hicks finished. We're ready when you are, Counselor. As the seminar wound down and the delegates dispersed, abuzz with excited chatter, Hicks caught Reese's eye across the room. The ex-Marine gave a subtle nod, his hand resting on his Spiketail's armored head. The pieces were falling into place, but as Hicks well knew, the game was just beginning. Winning over the council was one thing. Convincing a war-torn world to lay down arms and embrace the way of the cuddle? That would be the true test. Hicks's smile turned predatory. Good thing he'd always enjoyed a challenge. The Concordia's sleek hull glided into orbit around Zephyria, a world scarred by decades of conflict. Ambassador Hicks stood at the viewport, his teeth clenched as he gazed at the planet below. "Showtime," Reese murmured, giving his Spiketail a final scratch behind the ears. Altair's amphibious features tightened. The fate of galactic diplomacy rests on this mission. No pressure. Their shuttle touched down on a battle-scarred plane. As the ramp lowered, a cacophony of snarls and barks filled the air. Zephyrian warhounds, each the size of a small hover tank, circled the landing zone. Their scaled hides bristled with spines, jaws lined with razor-sharp teeth snapping at the air. Hicks strode down the ramp, hands spread wide. "Easy now," he called, his voice steady. "We're friends." A particularly massive warhound lunged forward, stopping inches from Hicks's face. Hot breath washed over him as the beast's nostrils flared. Hicks held his ground, meeting the creature's gaze. "That's it," he murmured. "You're not so scary, are you?" Slowly, deliberately, he raised a hand. The warhound's muscles tensed, a low growl rumbling in its chest. Then, as Hicks's fingers made contact with its armored hide, the growl softened into a surprised whine. Reese grinned, stepping forward with his Spiketail. "See? Nothing to worry about." Over the next hours, the human team demonstrated their cuddle techniques to the astonished Zephyrian factions. Hardened warriors watched in disbelief as Hicks and Reese transformed snarling warhounds into docile companions with nothing more than gentle touches and soothing words. By nightfall, the unthinkable had happened. Rival clan leaders sat side by side, their once vicious mounts curled at their feet like overgrown puppies. As Hicks led them through the final steps of a peace accord, Altair's communicator buzzed with incoming transmissions. "It's spreading across the galaxy," he reported, eyes wide. "They're calling you the Cuddle Diplomats. 6 worlds are requesting missions." Hicks nodded, allowing himself a small smile of satisfaction. But as he turned back to the assembled Zephyrians, a flicker of movement caught his eye. In the shadows beyond the camp, a figure watched. For just a moment, Hicks glimpsed a face twisted with hatred before it vanished into the night. Light years away, on the icy world of Crag Prime, High Commander Drizak pounded his fist on a holographic display. The image of Zephyria's successful peace talks shattered into static. "Insufferable humans," he snarled. "Their influence grows by the day." A subordinate officer approached, saluting stiffly. "The operatives are in place, Commander. They await your orders." Drizak's eyes narrowed. "Excellent. Let the humans come. We'll show the galaxy the true face of their cuddle diplomacy." On Felixia, young Kaisar limped into the barracks, fresh claw marks scoring his armor. His squad mates jeered, but he ignored them, collapsing onto his bunk. Another failed training session with the saber-tooth. As he drifted into an exhausted sleep, his datapad flickered with an incoming transmission. Footage from Zephyria played across the screen, humans taming warhounds with gentle touches. Kaisar's eyes widened. In the beast pens below, a low growl echoed. The saber-tooth paced, restless and angry. But for the first time, Kaisar saw possibility instead of danger. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow he would try something new. Ambassador Hicks leaned back in his chair, studying the holographic display before him. The faces of the Galactic Council members flickered in the air, their expressions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. An interspecies cuddling competition? Hicks raised an eyebrow. I must admit, Counselor Altair, this is unexpected. The Sci diplomat's amphibious features twitched in what might have been a smile. Desperate times call for innovative measures, Ambassador. We cannot ignore the impact your cuddle diplomacy has had on galactic affairs. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled holograms. Hicks glanced at Reese, who stood by the door with his ever-present spike tail. The ex-Marine gave a subtle nod. Very well, Hicks said, leaning forward. We'll participate, but I hope you understand the gravity of what you're proposing. This isn't just about showcasing humanity's skills. It's about fostering understanding between all species. Altair's webbed hands spread wide. Precisely, Ambassador. That is why we need your expertise in coordinating this event. Your methods have proven effective. As the meeting adjourned, Hicks turned to Reese. Looks like we've got our work cut out for us. Reese grinned, scratching his spike-tail's chin. Beats shooting things, usually. Over the following weeks, the galaxy buzzed with news of the impending competition. On 100 worlds, handlers and trainers prepared their most ferocious creatures for the ultimate test of interspecies bonding. On Felixia, young Khazar stood before the saber-toothed pen, his heart pounding. The beast inside, Zira, paced restlessly, muscles rippling beneath her silver-streaked fur. Today's different, Khazar whispered, more to himself than the saber-tooth. Today, we learn together. He keyed open the gate, stepping inside with slow, deliberate movements. Zira's amber eyes locked onto him, a low growl rumbling in her chest. Khazar took a deep breath, recalling the footage he'd studied. Gentle touches, soothing words, trust. Easy, girl, he murmured, extending a hand. We're going to change the galaxy, you and I. Light years away in the icy corridors of a crag battle station, High Commander Drezak addressed a group of grim-faced operatives. Your mission is clear, he snarled, pacing before them. Infiltrate this farce of a competition. Sow chaos. Show the galaxy the true face of these savage beasts the humans claim to have tamed. One of the operatives, a scarred veteran, stepped forward. And if we're discovered? Drezak's eyes narrowed. Then ensure your actions cannot be traced back to us. We cannot afford to be implicated in this unpleasantness. As preparations for the competition reached a fever pitch, Ambassador Hicks found himself aboard a luxury starliner bound for Concordia. The vessel's holds were filled with creatures from 100 worlds, everything from purring Garaxian spiketails to the notoriously belligerent Arcturian venomhounds. Hicks made his way to the observation deck, gazing out at the star-streaked void of hyperspace. The fate of galactic diplomacy now rested on a contest of cuddles. The sheer absurdity of it almost made him laugh. A commotion from the nearby cargo hold caught his attention. Angry shouts mixed with the unmistakable roar of an enraged predator. Hicks sprinted toward the sound, his hand instinctively reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. As he rounded the corner, he saw a crag handler struggling with a thrashing, tentacled monstrosity that had somehow broken free of its restraints. The creature's eyes blazed with fury as it lashed out, narrowly missing the panicked crew members. Hicks took a deep breath, centering himself. This, he realized, was only the beginning. The real challenge awaited on Concordia. With steady hands and a calm voice, he stepped forward to face the beast. Hicks approached the thrashing creature, hands outstretched. Easy there, big fella, he said, his voice low and soothing. The tentacled beast paused, its multifaceted eyes swiveling to focus on the human. That's it, Hicks murmured, inching closer. No one's going to hurt you. With agonizing slowness, he placed a hand on the creature's pulsating hide. A shudder ran through its bulk, and then, impossibly, it began to calm. The tentacles relaxed, coiling gently around Hicks's arms without constricting. Unbelievable, the crag handler muttered, mandibles clicking in agitation. Hicks allowed himself a small smile as he guided the creature back to its containment unit. Just a taste of what's to come at the competition, he said. But as the words left his mouth, a chill ran down his spine. The incident felt too convenient, too perfectly timed. His eyes narrowed as he scanned the gathered crowd, searching for any sign of foul play. Aboard another vessel bound for Concordia, young Kaisar of Felixia paced nervously before Zira's enclosure. The saber-tooth watched him with amber eyes, a low rumble emanating from her chest. "We can do this," Kaisar whispered, pressing his forehead against the transparent barrier. "We have to." A harsh laugh interrupted his moment of connection. Commander Vorlak loomed over him, lip curled in disdain. "Your human tricks won't save you in real combat," Vorlak sneered. "This competition is a waste of time." Kaisar straightened, meeting his superior's gaze. "With respect, sir, I disagree. What I've learned from studying the human's methods has already improved my bond with Zira. If we can apply these techniques on a larger scale—" "Enough!" Vorlak snapped. "You have your chance to prove yourself. Don't make me regret allowing this foolishness." As Vorlak stormed away, Kaisar turned back to Zira. The saber-tooth's eyes had never left him, and now she pressed her massive head against the barrier, as if trying to nuzzle him through the material. "We'll show them," Kaisar promised softly. "All of them." On Concordia, Counselor Altair's webbed fingers flew over holographic displays, coordinating the final preparations for the competition. A priority message flashed, demanding his attention. "Impossible," he muttered, reading the alert. "The entire venue unusable?" He keyed his communicator. "Ambassador Hicks, we have a situation." Hicks's voice crackled through the speaker. "What's wrong, Counselor?" "Solar flares have rendered our chosen location unsafe," Altair explained. "We need to move the entire event to a backup site in the Zeta Reticuli system." A beat of silence, then Hicks replied, "That's awfully convenient timing, don't you think?" "You suspect sabotage?" "I'm not ruling it out. We need to be on high alert." As they discussed contingency plans, neither was aware of the shadowy figure observing from a nearby alley. Raxon, the crag operative, allowed himself a thin smile before melting back into the darkness. The day of the opening ceremony arrived in a flurry of shuttles and transports converging on the hastily prepared facilities. Hicks stood at the main docking bay, greeting arrivals with Reese and his ever-present Spiketail at his side. A commotion near one of the incoming vessels drew their attention. The insectoid delegate Xyloth stumbled from his shuttle, mandibles quivering in distress. "Sabotage!" Xyloth chittered. "Our ship was nearly destroyed by an impossibly intense solar flare." Hicks exchanged a grim look with Reese. Their suspicions were proving all too accurate. Before they could investigate further, a piercing roar split the air. All heads turned to see a massive Felixian saber-tooth bounding across the landing pad, a young soldier sprinting to keep up. "Zira, wait!" Kaisar called, his face a mix of exhilaration and panic. The gathered dignitaries scrambled back in alarm as the saber-tooth barreled toward them. But instead of attacking, Zira skidded to a halt before Hicks and Reese. She lowered her head, rubbing it against the spike-tail in a gesture of feline greeting. Kaisar arrived panting. "I'm so sorry," he gasped. "She got excited when we landed and—" Hicks raised a hand, smiling. "No harm done. In fact, I'd say this is a perfect demonstration of what we're here to celebrate." As the crowd's tension eased, turning to murmurs of amazement, Raxon watched from the shadows, his fists clenched in frustration. This complication would require adjusting his plans. The operative touched his communicator. "Prepare for Phase 2, he hissed. "We move tonight." With the sun setting on a day of barely averted disaster, the gathered representatives of 100 worlds made their way to the hastily constructed arena for the opening ceremony. But as the first speeches began, a commotion erupted from the back of the crowd. "Humans go home!" The shout came from a group of protesters, their features obscured by hooded cloaks. "Keep your corrupting influence out of our affairs." As security moved to contain the disturbance, Hicks scanned the crowd. His eyes met Altair's, and he saw his own concern reflected in the counselor's amphibian features. The competition hadn't even begun, and already forces were aligning against them. Tomorrow would bring the first true test of their cuddle diplomacy, and the stakes had never been higher. As dawn broke over Concordia, the arena hummed with nervous energy. Competitors from across the galaxy filed in, their prized beasts in tow. Hicks stood at the entrance, his eyes hardened as he scanned the crowd for any signs of trouble. "Quite the turnout," Reese murmured, his spiked tail curled protectively around his legs. Hicks nodded. "Let's hope it stays peaceful." The opening ceremony began with a flourish of alien music and swirling holograms. Counselor Altair took the stage, his amphibious features solemn as he addressed the gathered species. "Today we celebrate the power of companionship across—" A piercing shriek cut through the air, drowning out Altair's words. The crowd rippled with confusion as the arena's systems flickered and sputtered. "What's happening?" Kaisar shouted, struggling to hold onto Zira's harness as the saber-tooth began to growl and paw at the ground. Before anyone could respond, blinding flashes erupted from hidden emitters throughout the arena. Solar flare disruptors, cleverly disguised as decorative fixtures, bathed the competition grounds in waves of searing radiation. Pandemonium erupted. Beasts of all sizes and species thrashed against their restraints, eyes wild with terror and rage. Handlers scrambled to maintain control, but it was a losing battle. "Everyone out!" Hicks bellowed, racing toward the nearest exit. But it was too late. With a deafening roar, a massive Arcturian venom hound broke free, its poisonous quills dripping as it charged into the fleeing crowd. Other predators followed suit, turning the arena into a chaotic battlefield of claws, fangs, and panicked screams. Kaisar stood his ground, even as other Felixian handlers retreated. "Zira, stay with me," he pleaded, pressing his forehead against the saber-tooth's massive skull. Her muscles trembled beneath his touch, fighting against the maddening influence of the radiation. Nearby, Hicks and Reese rallied a group of human cuddle diplomats. "We need to calm them down," Hicks shouted over the din. "Use everything we've learned." As if in response to his words, a Garaxian spike tail lashed out at its handler, razor-sharp tail whipping through the air. Without hesitation, Reese leapt forward, wrapping his arms around the creature's neck. "Easy, big guy," he murmured, stroking the spike tail's quivering hide. "We're in this together." To the amazement of those nearby, the spike tail's thrashing slowly subsided. It nuzzled against Reese, chirping softly. Inspired by the display, Kaisar redoubled his efforts with Zira. He ran his hands along her flanks, murmuring soothing words in her tufted ears. The saber-tooth's growls faded to gentle purrs. As pockets of calm began to form amidst the chaos, a commotion near the judge's platform caught Hicks's attention. Counselor Altair and the insectoid delegate Xyloth were locked in a heated confrontation with a hooded figure. "You!" Xyloth chittered furiously. "You're behind this!" The figure threw back his hood, revealing the scarred features of Raxon, the Crag operative. He sneered at the accusation. "Of course. Did you really think we'd let your pathetic cuddle diplomacy spread unchecked?" Hicks sprinted toward the confrontation, Reese and Kaisar close behind. But before they could intervene, Xyloth launched himself at Raxon, mandibles snapping. The brawl was brief but fierce. Raxon's combat training was evident as he deflected Xyloth's attacks, but the insectoid's multiple limbs gave him an advantage in close quarters. "Enough!" Hicks bellowed, reaching the fray. In a move that drew gasps from onlookers, he stepped between the combatants, arms outstretched. Reese was there in an instant, pulling Xyloth back while Kaisar, to everyone's surprise, wrapped Raxon in a bear hug. "What are you doing?" Raxon sputtered, struggling against the young Felixian's grip. "Saving you from yourself," Kaisar grunted, tightening his hold. The absurdity of the situation seemed to penetrate even Raxon's anger. His struggles weakened, then ceased altogether. "It's over," Hicks said, his voice firm but not unkind. "Shut down the AI. End this madness." For a moment it seemed as though reason might prevail. Then a harsh, guttural voice crackled over the arena's speakers. "Crag operatives, reveal yourselves. Seize control by any means necessary." The command galvanized dozens of beings throughout the arena. Cloaks were cast aside, revealing Crag soldiers in full battle armor. Weapons materialized, trained on the nearest bystanders. "No!" Altair cried, his webbed hands raised in a gesture of peace. "This is madness. We came here in the spirit of unity." But his pleas fell on deaf ears. The Krag soldiers advanced, herding terrified delegates and their beasts into tight clusters. Hicks surveyed the scene, his mind racing. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Yet as he watched, he saw something remarkable. Handlers and beasts huddled together, offering comfort in the face of danger. Species that had been mortal enemies now stood united against a common threat. He caught Altair's eye and nodded. The counselor understood. "Hear me!" Altair's voice boomed across the arena. "We stand together, or we fall alone. The Krags seek to divide us, but look around. See how we've already grown stronger through our bonds." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Even some of the Krag soldiers hesitated, clearly unprepared for this level of resistance. Hicks stepped forward, his voice joining Altair's. "We've seen today the power of companionship across species. Will we let fear and violence destroy what we've built?" The tension in the air was palpable. Cuddle diplomats and their animal companions faced off against Krag enforcers. The future of galactic relations hung in the balance. And then from the back of the crowd a voice rang out, "For cuddles and companionship!" The cry was taken up by others, growing in volume until it echoed throughout the arena. Handlers and beasts alike began to advance on the Krag positions, presenting a united front. The Krag commander's voice crackled over the speakers once more, tinged with desperation. "Stand your ground! We cannot let these—" But his words were drowned out by a deafening roar. Zira the Sabertooth, with Kaisar astride her back, leapt onto the main platform. The young Felixian's eyes blazed with willpower as he faced down the closest Krag soldiers. "What will it be?" Kaisar called out. "Violence or understanding? The choice is yours." "Unity," Kaisar declared, his voice ringing out across the arena. "We choose unity." A heartbeat of silence followed, then a thunderous cheer erupted from the gathered species. The Krag soldiers faltered, their weapons wavering as they faced a sea of determined faces, human, alien, and beast alike. Hicks seized the moment, his voice cutting through the din. "Everyone, form protective circles. Handlers, keep your companions calm. We move as one." The arena transformed into a living, breathing organism of cooperation. Vrixen handlers, their lithe forms graceful despite the chaos, maneuvered their bloodhowlers to the perimeter. The massive canines, usually snarling berserkers, now stood vigilant, hackles raised but controlled under their handlers' expert touch. "Jukali warriors to me!" Altair called out, his amphibian features set in unshakable focus. The bulky warriors lumbered forward, forming a living wall around clusters of smaller delegates. A Krag soldier, panic evident in his eyes, fired a wild shot. The energy bolt sizzled past Reese's ear, singeing his hair. Before he could react, a Jukali warrior stepped in front of him, the shot dissipating harmlessly against its armored hide. "Thanks, big guy," Reese muttered, patting the Jukali's scaly arm. The warrior rumbled in acknowledgement. Across the arena, two Krag enforcers dragged the Foranax elder toward a waiting shuttle, the ancient being's frail form limp in their grasp. Nearby, the Dralian Queen Trixelina's crystalline exoskeleton glinted as she struggled against her captors. Hicks' blood ran cold at the sight. "Kaisar!" he shouted, gesturing toward the captives. The young Felixian nodded, already spurring Zira into action. "Vrixen handlers, with me!" Kaisar called out as he and Zira bounded past. 3 Vrixen and their bloodhowlers fell in behind, forming an unlikely rescue party. Reese watched them go, torn between following and maintaining order here. A commotion to his left drew his attention. A group of Krag soldiers had cornered a cluster of delegates, weapons raised. Without hesitation, Reese sprinted toward the standoff. He vaulted over a fallen barricade, landing between the Krag and their targets. "Enough!" he shouted, arms spread wide. "Look around you! This isn't a battle you can win!" For a moment, the Krag hesitated. Then the lead soldier snarled, raising his weapon. "Stand aside, human, or—" His threat was cut short as a massive spike-tailed tail whipped through the air, knocking the weapon from his hands. Reese's companion chirped triumphantly, positioning itself protectively in front of the group. Across the arena, Kaisar's rescue mission had reached the captured council members. Zira roared, scattering the nearest crag soldiers. The Vrixen handlers and their bloodhowlers moved with precision, creating a protective circle around the Elder and Queen. "Your Majesty," Kaisar said, extending a hand to Queen Trixelina. "Can you walk?" The Dralian monarch's multifaceted eyes flashed with tenacity. "I can do far more than that, young one." As Kaisar helped her to her feet, Queen Trixelina's telepathic voice boomed across the arena. "Drizak, your actions bring shame upon your entire species. Stand down or face the consequences of your treachery." The Queen's words seemed to break something in the remaining crag forces. Weapons clattered to the ground as soldiers raised their hands in surrender. For a moment, victory seemed within reach. Then a high-pitched whine cut through the air, emanating from the direction of the arena's power core. Hicks's comm unit crackled to life, a frantic voice on the other end. "Ambassador, we've detected a monomolecular viral signature near the reactors. If it detonates—" Hicks didn't need to hear the rest. He locked eyes with Altair across the arena, a silent understanding passing between them. They had mere moments to prevent catastrophe. As Hicks sprinted toward the reactor complex, he realized with grim certainty that the true test of their cuddle diplomacy was only just beginning. Hicks's mind raced as he sprinted toward the reactor complex, his boots pounding against the arena floor. The gravity of the situation caused great concern upon him. A monomolecular viral signature meant devastation on an unimaginable scale if detonated. "Kaisar!" he shouted, waving the young Felixian over. "We need to split up. Gather every able-bodied being you can trust. We're going in." Kaisar nodded, his eyes gleaming with fierce perseverance. He turned to the nearby Vrixen handlers, their bloodhowlers pacing restlessly at their sides. "You heard the ambassador. With me." As Kaisar rallied his makeshift team, Hicks caught sight of a group of crag soldiers, their weapons discarded and hands raised in surrender. He approached cautiously, studying their faces for any sign of deceit. "You," he said, pointing to the apparent leader, "if you truly want to make amends, now's your chance. We need every asset we can get to stop this madness." The crag soldier hesitated for a moment, then nodded grimly. "What do you need us to do?" Hicks quickly outlined his plan, dividing the assembled forces into teams. One group will attempt to disarm the device directly. The rest create as much chaos as you can to keep their forces divided. As the teams dispersed, Hicks tapped his comm unit. "Altair, we're moving on the reactor. Can you handle civilian evac?" The Sele delegate's voice crackled through, strained but resolute. "Already on it, Ambassador. Go!" Hicks led his team through the winding corridors of the arena's underbelly, the distant sounds of battle echoing ominously. As they approached the reactor complex, a hush fell over the group. Hicks raised a hand, signaling them to halt. The door to the reactor room slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing Commander Drizak and a contingent of heavily armed crag soldiers. The commander's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Ah, Ambassador," Drizak drawled, his voice dripping with mock politeness. "How kind of you to join us for the grand finale." Hicks tensed, his eyes darting around the room, assessing the situation. Behind Drizak, he could see the pulsing glow of the reactor core, a sleek device attached to its base. "It's over, Drizak," Hicks said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Your forces are in disarray. Stand down, and we can end this peacefully." Drizak's laughter echoed off the metallic walls. "Peace? You fool. The real show is just beginning." As if on cue, the room erupted into chaos. Kaisar and Zira burst through a side entrance, the saber-tooth's roar drowning out the startled shouts of crag soldiers. Vrixen handlers and their bloodhowlers followed close behind, fangs bared and muscles coiled for attack. The clash was immediate and brutal. Crag shock troops, their armor gleaming under the harsh reactor lights, met the savage onslaught of cuddle-bonded beasts. Garaxian spiketails lashed out with their deadly appendages, while Felixian saber-tooths pounced with lethal grace. Hicks ducked and weaved through the melee, his eyes fixed on the reactor core and the device that threatened to end it all. He was mere meters away when a familiar voice cut through the din. "Not so fast, human." Hicks turned to see High Commander Raxon, his scarred face twisted in a sneer. The Crag leader hefted a massive weapon onto his shoulder, its barrel glowing with impossibly strong energy. "You should have stayed in your soft, weak world," Raxon spat. "Now you'll watch as everything you've built crumbles to ash." Time seemed to slow as Raxon's finger tightened on the trigger. Hicks braced for impact, knowing there was nowhere to run. Suddenly, a blur of motion caught his eye. Delegate Xyloth, his insectoid form battered and smoking, hurled himself at Raxon. The two collided in a tangle of limbs and weaponry, Xyloth's mandibles snapping furiously. "Go!" Xyloth chittered, his voice strained with pain and effort. "Stop the device!" Hicks hesitated for a split second, then sprinted toward the reactor. Behind him, he heard the sickening crackle of energy weapons and Xyloth's agonized screech. As Hicks reached the reactor core, he saw Drizak hunched over the monomolecular device, his fingers flying across a holographic interface. The Crag commander's eyes gleamed with manic glee as he initiated the detonation sequence. "It's too late, Ambassador," Drizak crowed. "In moments, your precious unity will be nothing but radioactive vapor." Hicks's mind raced, searching for a solution. Then a wild idea struck him. He tapped his comm unit. "Reese, the sprinklers! Activate them now!" For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a hiss and a sputter, the arena's fire suppression system roared to life. Water cascaded from the ceiling, drenching everything and everyone in the reactor room. The sudden deluge caught Drizak off guard. He stumbled back from the device, momentarily distracted by the unexpected downpour. It was all the opening Hicks needed. He lunged forward, shouldering Drizak aside and plunging his hands into the holographic interface. His fingers flew across the controls, desperately seeking a way to abort the countdown. Alarms blared as the reactor core pulsed with increasing intensity. Hicks could feel the heat radiating from it, scorching his skin even through the cascading water. With seconds to spare, Hicks's fingers found the right sequence. He slammed his palm down on the final command, and the reactor's angry glow began to fade. The monomolecular device powered down with a whine, its deadly potential neutralized. Hicks sagged against the reactor housing, his chest heaving. Around him, the sounds of battle began to die down as word of the averted catastrophe spread. But even as relief washed over him, Hicks knew the fight was far from finished. Outside the reactor complex, the arena still echoed with the sounds of conflict, and the cost of their victory, in lives and trust, had yet to be fully counted. Wiping water from his eyes, Hicks straightened up and turned to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The immediate crisis had been averted, but the real work of healing the rifts torn open by this day's events was only just beginning. Hicks wiped his brow, his uniform still damp from the sprinkler system. The immediate crisis had been averted, but the air in the reactor room crackled with tension. He turned to face the assembled crowd, a motley assortment of Rixen handlers, blood howlers, Crag soldiers, and various delegates. "We need to address this at the highest level," Hicks announced, his voice carrying across the room. "I'm calling for an emergency session of the Galactic Council." Queen Trixelina stepped forward, her crystalline form glistening under the harsh reactor lights. "Agreed, Ambassador. This treachery cannot go unpunished." Within hours, the council chambers buzzed with activity. Delegates from across the galaxy filed in, their faces etched with concern and nearly unleashed anger. At the center of it all stood Drizak, flanked by guards, his once proud stance now hunched and defeated. Elder Foranax, his ancient eyes burning with indignation, addressed the assembly. "The Crag have proven themselves unworthy of council membership. I move to strip them of their status immediately." A chorus of approval rose from many delegates, but others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A Zoraxian representative raised a clawed appendage. "While the actions of Drizak and his followers are reprehensible, is it wise to cast out an entire species for the actions of a few?" The debate raged on, voices rising and falling as arguments were made and countered. Hicks watched, a growing sense of unease settling in his stomach. This was exactly the kind of division Drizak had hoped to sow. Just as it seemed the council would reach an impasse, Kaisar stepped forward. The young Felixian's eyes blazed with conviction as he addressed the assembly. "Esteemed delegates," he began, his tail swishing behind him. "In Felixian culture, we believe in the power of reform over punishment. Our history is filled with tales of bitter rivals, becoming the closest of allies through understanding and shared experience." Kaisar's words hung in the air, and Hicks felt a spark of inspiration. He rose to his feet, drawing all eyes to him. "What if we could extend the principles of our cuddle diplomacy to the galaxy at large?" Hicks proposed. "An interspecies cuddle corps, where all races could gain hands-on experience in building trust and discipline through predator bonding." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some delegates leaned forward, intrigued, while others recoiled at the suggestion. A Crag representative, his scales dulled with stress, spoke up. "You expect us to place our military forces under alien-advised training?" Before Hicks could respond, Altair's amphibian form rose from his seat. "I have witnessed firsthand the power of these methods. The Sele delegation would be honored to co-sponsor such an initiative." To everyone's surprise, Delegate Xyloth chittered his agreement, his exoskeleton still bearing scorch marks from the earlier battle. "The Jota Hive concurs. We must explore new paths to unity." As support for the proposal grew, Hicks caught Kaisar's eye. The Felixian nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Together they began outlining the structure of the interspecies cuddle corps, detailing how it would integrate even the most hostile factions. The council chamber buzzed with excitement as the vote was called. When the final tally was announced, a supermajority in favor, Hicks felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. As the delegates filed out, already discussing implementation plans, Hicks found himself face to face with Drizak. The Crag commander's eyes, once filled with hatred, now held a glimmer of something else. Curiosity. Hope. "You surprise me, human," Drizak said, his voice low. "I expected retribution, not this." Hicks met his gaze steadily. "That's the point, Drizak. We're building something new here, something that might just change everything." As he watched Drizak being led away, Hicks knew the real work was only beginning. The coming days would test the limits of their cuddle diplomacy like never before. But for the first time since this crisis began, he felt a genuine sense of possibility. Hicks stood at the viewport of the Concordian Central Station, watching as another group of newly bonded handlers and their predator companions departed for their assigned posts. The sight of a towering Felixian saber-tooth padding alongside its human partner, both moving in perfect synchronization, filled him with a sense of pride. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" Reese said, joining him at the window. 6 months ago, I would have called this impossible." Hicks nodded, allowing himself a small smile. "The interspecies cuddle corps has exceeded even my wildest expectations. We're making real progress." As if on cue, a holographic news feed flickered to life nearby, displaying footage of a recent public demonstration. A Crag shock trooper, his scales gleaming, stood calmly beside a Garaxian spiketail. The once aggressive predator nuzzled its handler affectionately, eliciting gasps and applause from the watching crowd. "It's not all smooth sailing, though," Reese said, his expression darkening. "Have you seen the latest reports from the fringe sectors?" Hicks sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I've heard whispers, conspiracy theories about human plots for galactic domination. It's ridiculous, of course, but—" His words were cut short by a piercing alarm. Red emergency lights bathed the station in an ominous glow as panicked voices filled the air. "Security breach in Habitat 7, a computerized voice announced. "All personnel evacuate immediately." Hicks and Reese exchanged a look of dread before sprinting toward the nearest transport tube. As they hurtled through the station's maze-like corridors, Hicks' comm unit crackled to life. "Ambassador!" Kaisar's voice was strained, the sounds of chaos echoing in the background. "We're under attack. Someone's released the alpha predators in the training grounds." Hicks's blood ran cold. "Hold on, Kaisar. We're on our way." They emerged from the transport tube into a scene of utter pandemonium. Alarms blared as Corpsey members and civilians alike fled in terror. In the distance, Hicks could see the massive form of a xenomorphic terraclaw, its obsidian exoskeleton glistening as it tore through defensive barriers with terrifying ease. "How did that thing get here?" Reese shouted, his eyes wide with disbelief. Before Hicks could respond, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Ambassador, over here!" He turned to see Altair, the Sele delegate, crouched behind an overturned cargo container. Beside him, Xyloth's insectoid form trembled, his exoskeleton bearing fresh scorch marks. "What happened?" Hicks demanded as he and Reese took cover. Altair's amphibian features contorted with anger and fear. It was a coordinated attack. Sleeper agents within the core activated some sort of override on the Predator's training controls. And then, portals opened. Terraclaws, Hicks. They brought in Terraclaws. A bone-chilling roar cut through the air, followed by the sound of rending metal. Hicks risked a glance over their makeshift barricade and saw a Phylixian saber-tooth, its eyes glazed and feral, tearing into a nearby HAB unit. "We have to contain them," Hicks said, his mind racing. "If they breach the station's outer hull—" "It's already happening," Xyloth chittered, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "Reports are coming in from multiple sectors. Earth has gone dark, cutting all communications. The Crag homeworld is in flames. It's all falling apart." Hicks felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Everything they had worked for, all the progress they had made, it was unraveling before his eyes. A high-pitched whine filled the air, and suddenly a shimmering portal materialized mere meters from their position. Through its swirling surface, Hicks caught a glimpse of a nightmarish landscape, the Ginnungagap region, home to the most lethal predators in known space. As the monstrous shape of another Terraclaw began to emerge from the portal, Hicks made a split-second decision. "Reese, get Altair and Xyloth to the emergency bunkers," he ordered, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "I'm going to the central control hub. If we can't close these portals, nothing else will matter." Reese opened his mouth to argue, but the look in Hicks's eyes silenced him. With a grim nod, he began helping Altair and Xyloth to their feet. Hicks took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. As he prepared to make a dash for the control hub, he caught sight of Kaisar in the distance. The young Phylixian was standing his ground against a rampaging spiketail, his movements a fluid dance of evasion and calming gestures. In that moment, Hicks realized the true power of what they had created. The Cuddle Core wasn't just about controlling predators. It was about forging unbreakable bonds across species lines. And now, those bonds would be tested like never before. With renewed commitment, Hicks sprinted toward the control hub, dodging debris and fleeing civilians. The fate of the galactic realm hung in the balance, and the skills they had honed through Cuddle diplomacy might be their only hope of salvation.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.